Hello you lovely lot, my name is Max and welcome back to my YouTube channel and yet another Nottingham Forest match preview. Yes, we are back after a week away with no matches having been played, talking about our upcoming match on Friday night against Luton Town. What's going to turn into be one of our last real big tests in the Championship this season. Is 4th versus 5th, a huge match in terms of the context of the playoffs and potentially our very late charge towards those automatic promotion places. Before we get into that, we're also going to be talking a little bit about that win against Birmingham last week. So if you don't want to miss that, be sure to check that out at the beginning of this video. If not, I will leave the time code on screen as usual. And with that being said, let's crack into it and talk about the Luton Town match and our Birmingham game. Before we get into that, if you're new around here, don't forget to drop a like on this video and subscribe to the channel whilst you're down there. The growth on the channel recently has been incredible. We recently surpassed 400 subscribers, so thank you very much for helping me attain that. And hopefully we can hit 500 as soon as possible, and we'll look to do something special to celebrate that. And with that being said, let's kick things off talking about our result, 2-0 at home against Birmingham City. And what a result it was, as I mentioned, 2-0 at home against the Blues, Birmingham City. A really solid performance, two really well-worked goals being scored by Keenan Davis and Scott McKenna, the former, getting his 5th goal since joining us in January. And that moved us up at the time to 3rd in the league. And that clean sheet is very important for that oh so important goal difference at the end of the season. And I just wanted to touch, before we get into the game itself, on Scott McKenna. What a performance he's been putting in the last month or so, having gone out, I think it was the Liverpool match, for 6 weeks expected with an injury. He hasn't missed a single game since then. I don't know what they were on about with this injury. The physios, though, had an absolute blinder getting him back straight away after the international break, and since then has scored, assisted and kept 2 clean sheets in his 3 games since the international break. What a performance. Probably our best player over the last month or so, and easily one of the best defenders in the Championship at the moment. Back to the game, and really it couldn't really be seen as anything other than a Forest win on the day. Obviously a 2-0 victory in which we took 13 shots compared to 7 from our opponents on the day, seeing around 54% possession compared to their 46, and comprehensively more dominant than our blue opponents. Worth mentioning that all 7 of those attempts from Birmingham came from inside the box. Something we mentioned in the preview last time out was that they are very good at getting high quality opportunities inside their opposition box, and that game was really no different. 7 attempts, all from inside the box, and to be fair, the goalkeeper had a pretty good game on the day for us. Likewise for us, we're very good at getting high quality opportunities off, and again this game really exemplified with all but 2 of our shots on the day coming from within the width of the 6-yard box, whether that's inside or outside the box, or within the width of the goal, which is usually a good indicator of high quality goal scoring opportunities. Speaking of high quality opportunities, man of the match on the day has to go to the goal scoring hero Keenan Davis. Arguably, I would say our best January signing, at least to date in terms of the performances he's been putting up, and a characteristically dominant performance from the Villa loanee. He wasn't as creative as he usually is, which was surprising. He's a bit more of a creative forward than a goal scorer, but that meant he was able to really get on the end of everything we threw in his direction, leading the game and the squad both for shots and shots on target with 4 and 3 respectively. He also led the game for dribbles completed with 5, which is a really underrated facet of his game, his ability to move the ball and link play up with his fellow Forest players. He really is something so unique in the Championship at the moment, a really big physical specimen of a striker who can move like a guy half his size, and I genuinely think if he joins us next summer, whether we stay in the Championship or not, I can see him having a really promising future at the club. But enough of all that, let's park the Birmingham game for now and talk a little bit about our game upcoming tomorrow night at the time of recording against Luton Town. Friday night football is back, and I've got to tell you, possibly one of the biggest games left this season for both sides, as both teams currently occupy 4th and 5th space respectively in the Championship at the time of recording. And it's going to be pretty big in terms of who gets promoted this season. So as we usually do, let's talk a little bit about Luton's season as of now. They currently occupy 5th place in the Championship, 1 place and 2 points behind the Reds at the time of recording, having most recently played in a 2-0 defeat against Huddersfield Town on Monday night. After a couple of years of establishing themselves back in the Championship under Nathan Jones, they've really given it a good go of themselves to get promoted this season, having already surpassed their 62 points and 12th place finish from last season. And their form in recent weeks suggests that they could be one of the favourites for promotion this season. During a pretty tricky spell of fixtures, they've picked up 2 wins, 2 draws and 1 loss in their last 5 games. That loss, of course, as we mentioned, coming on Monday against Huddersfield Town. And it's been some journey for the Hatters over the last couple of years, re-establishing themselves back in the Championship, the 2nd division of English football. But prior to that, between 2017 and 2019, receiving back-to-back promotions from League 2 to League 1 and League 1 back to the Championship, in which Nathan Jones, I've got to say, has done a very admirable job. Shades of Bournemouth and Eddie Howe in the way in which he's taken this team from the Championship, from League 2 to the Championship, and potentially the Premier League. So he talked to me about how their season's going so far. Spoilers, very well. So let's talk a bit about what they actually are about. Are they a team actually of the quality of potentially getting promoted this season, or are they slightly punching above their weight? Let's talk about it. Going forward, I would argue, and I'm probably not being controversial here, is where Luton are at their strongest. They are currently the 4th highest goal scorers in the Championship at the time I recorded, having scored 59 goals, a tally only surpassed by ourselves, Nottingham Forest, Bournemouth and Fulham, 2 teams occupying themselves higher in the table, and of course us in a similar sort of position at the moment. But if you go deeper into this, they're not actually the most prolific chance creating side. They only generate about 10.5 chances per match on average. For comparison, we create about 12, so that ranks us pretty comfortably ahead of us and in the top 3rd of Championship sides. And they actually rank more similarly to Hull and Bristol City, 2 teams struggling at the moment in the Championship. And as you can imagine, as we've mentioned in recent weeks, the correlation between this is their finishing. They are one of the best finishing sides in the Championship at the moment. And we'll get into a little bit as to why they are so good at this, but they currently sit at a 12% conversion rate for their chances, joint 2nd in the Championship at the time of recording, and about the same as Nottingham Forest. Another area in which Luton are particularly strong in terms of their chance creation is their decision making as to when they take their shot. Despite the fact they don't create a lot of chances, they score a lot of goals, and this is largely due to the locations in which they take those shots. They currently lead the Championship in terms of the percentage of their chances they take from within the 6-yard box, 14% of which come from within that area. And you can already imagine that means they are getting extremely high quality opportunities. And on the flip side of things, they are in the bottom 4 of Championship sides for shot percentage taken from outside the box. Now, what is the product of this? This means that they're not necessarily going to produce the most chances. They may be willing to make that extra couple of passes in order to work the angle and create a high quality opportunity, but it could sacrifice them getting a shot off, which is pretty much what we've established here with the Hatters at the time of play. So we've spoken a lot about their attack there, how potent they are in front of goal. So let's talk a little bit about the other end of the pitch and their defensive record. And this is a little less of a pretty view. At the time of recording, they are currently 15th in the league for goals conceded, with 47 in total. A really poor number, and not a number you would associate with a team pushing for promotion this season. This is despite the fact that they only really concede around the same amount of shots as Forest this season, who are the 2nd best defensive team in the league this season. So why is there such a gulf in goals conceded between 2 pretty similar defensive teams? The big reason is between the sticks. Mainly, there probably are other reasons, but this seems to be the most glaring reason as to why Luton have conceded so many goals compared to Forest. Just to give you a little bit of context, Nottingham Forest goalkeepers this season have combined for the highest average save percentage in the Championship this season at 77.7%. As we've mentioned previously, average in the Championship is around 69-70%, so they are performing well above average, and I can say on the eye test that Bryce Samba and even Horvath have kept us in games at times. On the other hand, Luton have had 4 different goalkeepers take up the number 1 jersey over the course of this season, none of them managing to attain more than 20 appearances in the league this season. A big problem with this means that inconsistency at the back can lead to mistakes and a lack of communication between the back line. Simon Schluger, who has been the number 1 predominantly for the majority of this season, I say that very loosely, he's the man who's played the most minutes in goal for Luton this season, is actually having an absolute shocker between the sticks this season. Of keepers to have played at least 10 league games in the Championship this season, he has the lowest save percentage of all of them at 55%, well below the average of championship shot stoppers, and meaning 1 in 2 shots he faces, he concedes pretty much. The byproduct of this is shipping a lot of goals that you would probably associate a at least average shot stopper of championship standard to be saving, and you would think had they saved some of these chances, they would have been more competitive in games and probably in a more comfortable position in terms of their promotion bid. Overall, Luton are a pretty good side. Top 6, probably not, but not too far off it. They definitely possess a lot of the talent and the materials required for a team to get into the top 6 of the championship. So it's not really too much of a surprise they're occupying 5th place in the league at the moment. But I would suggest that they are probably 1 or 2 signings away from really competing for a promotion place in the Premier League next season. I would suggest this probably isn't their year, but it's a really good barometer of a side who in 2 or 3 years' time could build something really special, and hopefully I'd like to see them back in the Premier League, or in the Premier League for the first time. I think it would be really good. They've got great fans, great club, it'd be great to see. I just don't think this is their year. So we've examined their numbers and talked a little bit about how they're doing this season. So let's talk a bit about how they try and translate this in the way they play in their matches and what Forest need to do to counteract this. In order to aid in doing this, I have been on Google and I found a couple of really good sources in terms of explaining Luton's style of play, and I've compounded this with my usual research using my usual places of Who Scored, FBref and YouTube, and I will be sure to leave those resources in the description below because I don't think I can really do them justice, and they're a really interesting read as to understanding one of the more interesting sides in the Championship at the moment. In terms of a shape, they're not too dissimilar to Nottingham Forest. At the moment, they adopt a back 3 formation, very much the flavour of the month in the Championship at the moment, featuring 2 orthodox forwards leading the line and sometimes a number 10 to offer them extra numbers in the final third, but sometimes just simply a midfield 5 behind them. I would suggest that Luton, more so than a lot of other teams in the Championship this season, are very resembling of a modern German team. Their style is very modern and German. They average the 4th least possession in the league per match at 44%, and in terms of pressing, they are one of the most aggressive teams in the Championship this season, in which they try to win the ball as high up the pitch and transition with quick direct passing, very similar to if you look at Southampton in the Premier League or a lot of mid-table to upper mid-table Bundesliga German teams at the moment, very similar to the Red Bull model style of play, that quick direct transitional style of play. So let's break that down a little bit more in terms of the actual numbers there. Like I said, they are the 4th lowest ranking team in terms of possession per match at around 44%, which sees them ahead of the likes of like Peterborough and Derby and the sort of lower teams in the Championship at the moment. Despite the fact they don't see a lot of the ball, they are a very, very aggressive pressing side, ranking 4th in the Championship for passes allowed by the opposition per defensive action attempted at around 9, meaning they allow the opposition to string together around 9 passes every time they attempt a defensive action, tackle, interception, all that kind of stuff. And I've mentioned this in the past. This is a really good barometer and a measuring stick in terms of how intense the pressing of a side is. And like I said, Luton are 4th in the Championship for this, so they're very intense in their defensive pressing. I also mentioned how direct and vertical this Luton team is at the moment under Nathan Jones, and a really good way of measuring this is the amount of passes per possession sequence. There's not a really fun anagram for that one. For Luton, are 2nd in the Championship, 2nd from bottom for this in terms of the amount of passes they put together in every possession sequence, meaning only one team strings together fewer passes in those sequences. And we can further support this by saying that they are also in the top 5 teams in the Championship for passes over 30 yards attempted. This means that they don't necessarily string together a lot of passes, and the passes they do string together are very direct, forward, long passes up to that front line to try and get goal scoring opportunities. In terms of their defensive shape, they line up very much in that sort of 5-3-2 system that I mentioned earlier. The front 2 and the wing backs press forward into a front 4. That front 4 can then occupy a sort of nominal back 4, almost in a man-oriented style of press. And the advantage of doing this means that a team is forced into mistakes. They have to make quicker decisions, and this usually leads to them surrendering possession to the Hatters. Another hallmark of their press, and actually their quite unorthodox press compared to many modern sides is the scenarios allowing for their trigger presses. These are scenarios in the match in which they trigger a press, a team then tries to win possession back. Now most teams when they press try and press teams into the wide areas, the idea being you can't score from the touchline, which most teams can't, and the idea being to stretch the team as wide as possible so it makes chance creation as hard as possible, and they use the touchline as an extra press because obviously once it goes out of play it surrenders possession back to the opposition. Luton are completely the opposite to this and quite unorthodox in the way they do this. They actually force teams to press inside, they force teams to play through them and through the centre of the pitch, and this then triggers their press, which congests the centre of the pitch and surrenders possession back to the Hatters if successful. If teams do manage to play through this, they'll then drop back into a low block of a 5 and a mid block of a 3, which is very, very compact, forcing teams to get around them into the wide spaces. This is their defensive third shape at least. And this then forces teams into a wide area, and you'll see if you ever look at how Luton win the ball back, they tend to win it back in their defensive third in the wide areas. They force teams wide and try and win the ball in wide areas so they can transition through the centre of the pitch through Adebayo and Harry Cornick. And that front two, Adebayo and Cornick, are very good pressing forwards. They are very much the leaders of the press in that team for Luton, but they're also, Adebayo in particular, are very potent forwards. Adebayo, I believe, their top goal scorer in the Championship this season. To summarise, Luton are a potent, high pressing and compact side that are very hard to break down, dangerous on the transition, and able to press teams in both conventional and unconventional methods, which makes them a highly unpredictable side when you play them. Therefore, Forest really need to be wary of what to expect from Luton Town. They need to be switched on defensively and probably quite patient in their build-up, because Luton will press them into resistance if they're not. The main way in which Forest have attacked this season is through the wide areas, and I really think we need to maintain this. If you play through the middle, you're just playing to Luton's strength. They'll press you into resistance and they'll just win the ball back, go up the other end and score. So it's really important we use the half space and the wide areas to our full effect, which we have done largely in swaves this season, but it's going to be more important so in this game against the team who want us to go through the centre and may leave the space there for them to then trigger their press. Overall, I'm going to suggest this is probably going to be one of our toughest games in our run in. And you're probably saying no, obviously they're 5th in the league. We do still have Fulham and Bournemouth left, which are 2 very tough games upcoming, but I do think this might actually be tactically the toughest of those 3 games. They're certainly going to be the most interesting team, and I genuinely could see this game going either way. I'm going to suggest a 1-0 win for the Reds. I do think we've got the quality man for man in our squad to overturn this very tricky Luton Town side, but I could easily see this being the slip-up match that costs us automatic promotion and forces us to drop down into the playoffs this season. But as always, let me know in that comment section down below what you think the result is going to be and who you think is going to prevail on the day, and more importantly what you think of Luton Town this season. They're a very interesting side with a very, very modern Germanic style of playing football, and I think that's a really cool sign of things to come in the Championship in years to come. And whilst you're down there, don't forget to drop a like on this video and subscribe if you're new around here. We recently passed 400 subscribers. We're getting very close to 500, and I would very much appreciate your support in the next few weeks as we head into the final few games of this season. That is it for this video though. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will catch you later. Enjoy the game, Reds. I will see you later.